This is a reading from the notebooks by Maria Valtorta, 1945 to 1950. October 4th, 1949, 3:30 p.m. After so long, I saw my mother. Footnote 388. See note 55. She was amidst the flames of Purgatory. I had never seen her in the flames. I cried out. I was unable to repress the cry, which I later justified to Marta with an excuse so as not to disturb her. My mother was no longer so obscure, grayish, hard-faced and hostile to the all and everyone, as I had seen her in the first 3 months after her death, when, though I entreated her, she did not want to turn to God, nor was she dull and gloomy, almost frightened, as I had seen her in the following years. She was beautiful, rejuvenated and serene. She looked like a bride in her gown, no longer gray, but white, extremely white. She came out of the flames from her groin upwards. I spoke to her and asked, "Are you still there, Mother? And yet I prayed so much to shorten your expiation, and had prayer offered. This morning, for the 6th anniversary, I received Holy Communion for you, and you are still there?" Cheerful and festive, she replied, "I am here, but only for a short while now. I know you have prayed and had prayer offered. This morning I took a big step towards peace. I thank you and the nun who prayed for me. I will repay you later. Soon, in a little while, I will be finished with purgation. I have already purified the sins of the mind, my proud head, then those of the heart, my acts of selfishness. They were the most serious. I am now expiating those of the lower part, but they are a trifle compared to the others. But when I saw you so obscure and hostile, you did not want to turn to heaven. Ah, I was still haughty. To humble myself, I didn't want to. Then pride came down. And when you were so sad, I was still attached to earthly affections, and you know, it was not a good attachment. But I already understood. I was sad for that reason, because I understood, now that there was no longer any sin of pride, that I had loved God in the wrong way, wanting Him to be my servant, and you, too. Don't think about it any more, Mother. It's over now. Yes, it's over. And if I'm like this, I thank you. It's because of you that I'm like this. Your sacrifice. It obtained purgatory for me, and, in a short while, peace. In 1950? Even before, soon. Then there will be no more need to pray for you. Pray just the same as if I were here. There are so many souls of all kinds, and many souls of mothers, forgotten. One must love and think of all. Now I know. You are able to think of all, love all. I know this too, and now understand that it is right. Now I no longer try to sketch out the exact words, the process for God. Now I say that it is right. Pray for me then. Ah, I thought of you before. See how I have kept the house for you. You know, eh? But I will now pray for your soul and for you either to be happy or to come with me. And Dad, where is Dad? In Purgatory. Still? And yet he was so good. He died as a Christian with resignation. More than I. But he's here. God judges differently from the way we do. A way entirely His own. How can Dad still be there? Ah, I felt bad, for I had hoped for some time that he was already in heaven. And Marta's mother? You know, Marta? Yes. Now I know where Marta is. Before, my character, Marta's mother had been out of here for a long time. And the mother of my friend Eroma Antonini? You know. I know. We know everything. Those of us in Purgatory. Not so well as the saints, but we know. When I was coming down here, she was leaving. I saw the tongue-like flickering of the flames, and they brought me pain. I asked, "Do you suffer a lot from that fire?" Now I don't. Now there is another, stronger one, which almost keeps me from feeling this one. And what's more, that other fire makes you want to suffer, and now the suffering doesn't hurt. I never wanted to suffer. You know. You are beautiful, Mother. Now. You are the way I wanted you to be. If I'm like this, I owe it to you. Ah, how many things you understand when you're here. The more you get purified of pride and selfishness, the more you understand. I had so much of them. Don't think about it any more. I must think about it. Goodbye, Maria. Goodbye, Mother. Come soon to take me, when God wills. I wanted to record this. It contains teachings. God punishes first the sins of the mind, then of the heart, and finally the weaknesses of the flesh. One must pray for those abandoned in purgatory as if they were our relatives. The judgment of God is very different from ours. Those in purgatory understand what they did not understand during life, because they were filled with themselves. Aside from my affliction over Dad, I am happy to have seen her so serene, indeed joyful. Poor Mother. November 21st, 1949, 3 p.m. Jesus says, on this day, last year, I said I would take away the bag and pilgrim's staff from the shepherds to test the Samaritans, and I have done so. I tore away a mask, more than one, and finished their test, because it was the last test for them. I said, after this one, that's all, for it would mean tempting the creature's patience. Yours, my creature. In past days I told you that as for these, too, the prophecy of March 1947 came true. So my decree must be fulfilled for these, too. How often have I said that the figure of Judas, enthusiastic and believing, then unbelieving to the point of betrayal, in a yes and no, lasting 3 years, which ended in deicide, is the figure that should be studied most among the followers of Christ, because it is the one most frequently found among them. How often have I said that the house in Bethany could not host the priests and Pharisees, aside from 2 or 3, who were exceptions in the Mass. How often have I said that Samaria was better than Jerusalem for Christ, until those in Jerusalem, priests, scribes, and Pharisees, moved by envy and calculation, cunningly corrupted the weakest among the Samaritans, and made them hostile to me. What is written in the eternal books is fulfilled, as is proper, because a divine decree, in being just, is always fulfilled. Now these, the fanatics of an hour, for the new Bethany, may not remain in Maria's house. A place exists there for the true Christ and for his true ministers. Maria may remain there, for she is also a Lazarus in her suffering, and Martha, active in serving you, that contemplate, and a few faithful disciples, few and tested, and to remain there with Christ in true living faith and the religion of the Spirit, in unitive life with Christ, not in the architecture of pompous temples, exhibited to be seen and admired, but empty, empty, empty without me, because they are full of the concupiscence of life. Maria, since they ceased to believe in what you are, concupiscence has enveloped them. For you, Maria, extinguished concupiscence in those who love you, because you, my flower, are a perfume of me, and my fragrance extinguishes fevers. But when those who loved you cease to love, then, as with Judas, there is no longer anything but the victory of the carnal man, first and later of the seducer. It was necessary to test them, though, to break their pride in believing they are perfect. The summit is reached by a long, wearisome, and faithfully followed way. Sometimes a lifetime is not enough to touch the peak of justice, and not even there is one secure if one does not ascend and is not nailed to the cross of perfect charity, which is complete sacrifice. You are there, and remain there. You do not fail, you do not fall, because you wanted love to crucify you there, so as to be more certain of not plunging down. Everything in you repeats me. I have also told you this many times. Hence for you there is poverty, incomprehension, betrayal, mockery, and calumny. Everything, as for me, and solitude. The great souls are always alone, for the other common ones cannot rise where the few truly great souls soar. But eternal, perfect greatness, God comes down to where the solitary ones are, and is the friend who alone suffices to fill the voids of those deserting a holy friendship. I remain for you, increasingly yours, increasingly one with you. I say to them, though, that calling me will be in vain, for they have preferred other voices and other ways to mine, acting with you as some of my followers acted with me, unfaithful because they were called back to justice by me. My word is salvation, light, and wisdom to the humble in heart, but it is poison for whoever is not so. I spoke to provide a proper way for their literal, unspiritual piety, but my word, crashing into their carnal self, opened it, for it is powerful, and from that self, from their heart, just as I said, what was hidden there came out. It is from the heart that there come wicked thoughts, acts of envy, murder, and fornication, and thefts, including those which are moral and spiritual, more serious because, unpunished on earth, they are later judged and punished by me in the second life. There come false witness and blasphemy against one's neighbor, in addition to God. It is useless to call me now. Charity does not come to the aid of those without charity, wounding my innocent servant, you. And because of the misfortunes which will strike them, let them say, we wanted this, for we have practiced injustice and animosity against Jesus' friend, who loved us and still loves us. How can they ask God for mercy when, without justice and without mercy, they fail to put down their unjust ill will towards you? Sirach 28 so states, footnote 389, Sirach 28 verses 3 to 5. And so it is. And sing, you that were irritated have cast out indignation in order to console me. You, my Savior, take away my fear. You, my strength, come to my aid. You, my joy, brings me happiness. Be blessed, my Violet. Jesus says, wanting to unload the responsibility for what is happening on God, thus attempting to diminish their sin in your sight and that of the world, out of animosity, cowardliness, or indolence and quietism, by saying God must act, makes them resemble those who, when I was on the cross, uncovered themselves in their deepest and truest self, after losing all restraint and control over their hypocritical actions, in the fever of what they thought was their triumph, when shouting, if you are the Son of God, come down from the cross now and save yourself, so that we can believe that you are truly the King of Israel, the Messiah. All men have the intellect to judge. The men of God, his servants and ministers, priests, also have the assistance of the studies they have completed, and of the supernatural aids which are appropriate for their mission, so as to judge even better. How then do they imitate their bygone predecessors by tempting God? Let them act, for it is up to them to act with holiness and justice, and I will bless them. But if they do not act, and do not serve me, demanding that I do what moreover would be of no use, because the desire not to serve me is in them, for them I will have the silence of condemnation, which I had for the heads of the priests and the scribes, the silence I did not have for the good thief, a wrongdoer, it is true, but who did not wait for me to act in order to be converted. He acted, and then, certain that I would reward his good will, he turned to me to have me absolve him. What a lesson for all! God is not to be mocked or tempted, so as not to imitate Satan tempting me in the desert, and the priests now condemned together with their temple, the hypocritical Pharisees and scribes, filled with iniquity, who appropriated the goods of women who were alone, and their protégés, mocking me on the cross. How is it that their action does not appear clear for their wisdom, to which they attach such importance? This action against me, and against the souls you torture with your no, and deprive of the word. January 6th, 1950. The Holy Spirit says, write, and let it be a reply to the foolish deductions of some. The long silence, 18 months, is a reply, as are the new words. The long silence is a reply telling your detractors that in you there is not a desire to write or not to write, but only a desire to obey God. If he speaks, you write. If he is silent, you do not write. For you are not a counterfeiter of extraordinary things. For you are not a mad woman who takes words and visions deriving from delirium to be supernatural words and supernatural visions. You are the instrument, the spokesman, and an instrument is inactive until the artificer takes it into his hands to have it carry out a task, and the spokesman has no voice until the voice fills it with itself, so that he will spread it around the world. This is what you are, and nothing else. And the new words, after the long silence, are a reply to tell the truth to the blind, with their eyes covered by the scales of their carnality, who see as their thought, which is not good, sees, not, indeed, as reality is, for they are blind. They see the outside, and do not know what is occurring between the divine spirit and the spirit of the servant of God. They see the apparent silence, but cannot penetrate into the divine motives for that silence, for the carnal man cannot penetrate with his opaque heaviness into the mysteries of the light-made word. I now say that to respond to these fools I will speak after so much silence. But since I am God, and God is goodness, I will not force you, a victim, consuming yourself increasingly. I will adapt my word to your physical possibilities, thereby giving a new lesson to those sinning against charity and justice, and thus against God, who do not adapt their actions towards you, a sick woman, with charity and justice, and sin against the twofold love which the ancient law and the incarnate word proclaimed to be the first commandment, without which the others cannot be true and living, and the formal, literal modes of worship are vain and false and dead remains. For what constitutes divine life, what divinizes even a smile and makes it the object of future reward, is love, only love. Not without divine counsel the lessons halted at verse 4 of the 8th chapter to the Romans, and resumed at the 5th verse of the same chapter after 18 months. Up to the 4th verse there was a reference to you that live in the Spirit, and to those like you. From the 5th verse to the 7th they are spoken of, and with this point the lesson resumed, just right for the present hour. Even the winking of an eye is governed by God's wisdom. Footnote 390. We omit over 100 handwritten pages, dated January the 8th to June 2nd, 1950, containing 12 of the lessons on Paul's letter to the Romans, as well as the next notebook in its entirety, dated June the 16th to November 16th, 1950, containing the remaining 10 lessons. September 11th, 1950. Excessive fear paralyzes the forward surge of souls. Oh, and it's the subtitle is From Our Lady to Mother Teresa M. of St. Joseph. Excessive fear paralyzes the forward surge of souls. If they had not been excessively afraid, the apostles would not have left my son alone when he was captured. For they were good at heart, but too fearful. First of enemies, then of Jesus, because of their abandonment. Excessive fear produces Jansenism, and Jansenism increases fear, because it instills the conviction that it is hard to be saved. And not only this, but in attenuating the Spirit's embraces with love, it makes the soul weaker and weaker. Tell her not to break her wings and dim the flame under the spontaneous condemnation, I am bad. No one is good except God, but he is so good that he is so even to those who are not entirely good. The most beautiful conquests of God were Matthew, Mary Magdalene, Zacchaeus, and Disma, that is, the great sinners. Great. But they did not spiritually throw themselves onto the ground passively, saying, I am so bad, but rather, with their spirit, they surged up and ran towards forgiveness and love with trust.